only on WION. The world is one.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. World is one.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York. I'm Susan Tehrani and these are the top headlines this hour. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says his government is working, quote, flat out to settle post-Brexit trading problems in Northern Ireland to end political paralysis in Belfast. Slovak president dismisses the prime minister's government after it fell in a no-confidence vote, raising political instability and a possible path to early elections in 2023. At least 10 people were killed, including 5 children, after a fire broke out in a 70-story apartment building in a suburb of the French city of Lyon.
Ah, ok, bon.
A SpaceX rocket blasted off early on Friday, carrying a U.S.-French satellite designed to conduct an unprecedented global survey of Earth's surface water. And around 14,000 police officers will be on duty across France on Sunday to guarantee security as Les Bleus takes on Argentina in the World Cup final. Starting off here in the United States, botched up executions of death row convicts are making headlines in the U.S. Findings of the U.S. death penalty information Center says that a shocking 1 in 3 executions carried out in the U.S. in 2022 turned out botched up and a bloody mess. And big problems with the 40-year-old lethal injection method has come out. Of 20 executions carried out in the U.S. this year, 7 were ugly failures. That's a problem rate of around 35%. 6 states executed criminals. In at least 3 of them, the procedures went haywire at multiple stages. In the first case in Alabama, executioners struggled for 3 hours to set an IV line. The other 2 executions were called off because the execution team could not find a workable vein before the death warrant expired. Also in Arizona, executioners tried to set the IV for 25 minutes. They then cut into the prisoner's private parts to find a vein to carry out the execution. Reports called it a bloody mess. Witnesses say that the execution team had to, quote, wipe up a fair amount of blood. During another execution in Arizona, the prisoner advised the IV team on how to find a vein in his body. Lawyers have described the drawn-out attempt to find a vein as a form of torture. Now remember, the lethal injection system of execution is supposed to be a painless death penalty. Injections are used to avoid unnecessary cruelty to inmates. Of the people executed this year, several came from vulnerable groups. 8 of them suffered from a serious mental illness. 5 were intellectually disabled. Executions and new death sentences have been going down in the U.S. this week. Oregon Governor Kate Brown commuted the sentence of 17 death row inmates. Their sentencing were changed to life imprisonment without parole, and even as the number of executions decreased, more problems with the system are being uncovered. Okay, we are joined by our guest this hour for more on this really troubling report. Thank you so much for joining us. How is this that executions right now have become so controversial in the United States? Okay, we are joined by Mr. Colin Sumner. Thank you so much for joining us. How is it that executions have become so controversial in the U.S. as of late?
Well, it's Professor Colin Sumner. I've been in criminology for 40, 50 years, depending how you count. I don't know. I'm a retired professor in the UK. I would imagine that the reason is because there's a declining belief in the civilized value of capital punishments in the US. Clearly, several states have stopped doing it.
And Professor, on a global scale, do you think that capital punishment and executions are something that we need to be looking more into moving into the future?
Well, I can't speak for the whole planet. We abolished capital punishment in in Britain in 1969 in the end, although initially 1965 and finally in 1998 for treason. So obviously many different countries have different attitudes, different cultural philosophies about it. It's hard to generalize in that way. I mean, in this country, we don't approve of capital punishment because, well, there are too many miscarriages of justice, basically.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us on WION. Moving on, let's talk about the U.S. and how it is set to pass a record $858 billion Defense Act, which lays down an 8% increase in defense spending over last year and $45 billion more than what President Biden had originally proposed. The U.S. Senate cleared what's called the National Defense Authorization Act, and it's now headed to the White House for final assent. The highlights are a hefty pay rise for service personnel, big support for Ukraine and Taiwan, and a withdrawal of the U.S. military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate.
On this vote, the yeas are 83, the nays are 11. The 60-vote threshold having been achieved, the motion to concur in the James M. Inhofe National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023 is agreed to.
The increased defense spending will address key challenges faced by the U.S. armed forces. First, it will help military personnel deal with inflation. The bill will provide a 4.6% increase in basic military pay for service members. This is the largest pay hike in 20 years. It also increases housing allowances of service members by 2%. It provides relief to low-income military families. Families earning up to 150% of the federal poverty line can access a basic needs allowance. This is up from the earlier 130% threshold. The bill will also create a pilot program to reimburse military families for some childcare costs. These are for costs related to a permanent change of station. Now, looking outward regarding foreign policy, it provides more aid for Ukraine and enhances the U.S. defense partnership with Taiwan. The NDAA will extend and modify the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. Funding for it will increase to $800 million. That is $500 million more than the amount in last year's defense bill. The bill also changes how the U.S. sends weapons and assistance to Ukraine. It allows the U.S. government to pay arms companies directly to produce weapons for Ukraine instead of having to send Ukraine weapons from existing U.S. stockpiles. The NDAA also streamlines bureaucratic processes related to weapon acquisitions. It will allow companies to deliver arms to Ukraine faster and replenish U.S. stockpiles at a faster rate. Also for Taiwan, the NDAA will establish a defense modernization program. It will authorize up to $10 billion in foreign military financing grants over the next 5 years, make up to $2 billion available in the form of loans. Also, the president will be authorized to give Taiwan up to $2 billion in weapons and munitions. And the Pentagon will be allowed to put weapons in Taiwan in case a conflict with China arises. The U.S. has asked Australia to extradite an ex-Marine accused of breaking American arms control laws by training Chinese fighter pilots. Daniel Duggan, a former U.S. citizen accused of training Chinese military pilots to land on aircraft carriers, according to an indictment unsealed by a U.S. court. He has been in Australian custody since his arrest back in October. In 2017, the indictment said that Duggan provided military training to Chinese pilots through a South African flight school on 3 occasions, in 2010, and 2012. It lists unnamed co-conspirators, including one South African and one British national, who were executives of a test flying academy based in South Africa, with a presence in China, and a Chinese national who acquired military information for the Chinese military. The National Archives has released all of its documents involving the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. With the over 13,000 documents published online, the White House says more than 97% of all records in its collections have now been made publicly available. The news is big, but no huge revelations can be expected from the papers. Historians, however, hope to learn more about the Kennedy assassin from the latest release. The government was supposed to release the papers by the original deadline of 2017. This was in accordance to the 1992 Congress legislation requiring the release of all remaining government records about the assassination. But presidents have extended that deadline, including President Biden and former U.S. President Donald Trump. On Thursday, President Biden ordered the documents released in a memo. This is the largest dump of files from the National Archives' JFK Assassination Records collection since the year 2018. President Biden has also ordered the remaining records to be publicly released by the 13th of June, 2023.
That Governor Connolly was shot in the upper left chest, and the first unconfirmed reports say the president was hit in the head. The president's wife, Jackie Kennedy, was not hurt. She walked into the hospital at her husband's stretcher side. And
amidst the deepening economic crisis, people of Tunisia are all set to vote to form a new parliament. But will prevailing issues affect President Kais Saied's chances to win? Our next report tells you more.
In the coastal town of Zarzis, teenagers like Ismail Shalahki couldn't care less about Tunisia's election. All they're waiting for is the chance to risk their lives on a smuggler's boat bound for Europe. A dozen years after the country's revolution triggered the Arab Spring, poverty levels are rising and the political system is all but broken. Nobody Reuters spoke to in Zarzis intended to vote on Saturday, including Shalahki, who, like most of his friends, is unemployed.
How do they benefit me? They don't benefit those who voted for them. We go through the headache of queuing, registering our names and dipping our fingers in ink. It's meaningless. I'm boycotting.
In Zarzis, misery is sharpened by anger. It's one of Tunisia's main launch pads for migrants heading to Italy. Protests shook the town after a September shipwreck. 18 local migrants drowned. President Kais Saied has pledged an investigation into the Zarzis deaths, but the bereaved say nothing has changed. Authorities launched no rescue effort, they say, and those who washed ashore were buried unidentified. Salim Zridat's 15-year-old son Walid was among the missing. He searched hospitals and morgues for him. He can no longer bear to see the sea.
To be clear, we are neither with nor against the government. We're not political. We need one truth, and that is, where are our children? We don't ask for more than that. Walid, what can I say? Walid, I may be happy if my son's body is found, even if there are only bones, but I'm also sad about the fate of the youth. I'm sadder about the children who will be next.
Tunisia's election is for a new parliament, but it will have little say. Saied forced through a constitution this year that concentrated power in his hands. As of November, more than 17,500 Tunisians had landed in Italy this year alone, according to the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights, an organisation that works with migrants. The economy shrank 8.5% during the pandemic, and supermarket shelves have emptied.
We have nothing to keep us here, nothing. You see the unemployed all around, you have no way out and no future. We have children and don't know if they'll succeed or fail in life. We've even reached the point where we don't know if they'll live or not.
A local founded this cemetery for migrants outside Zarzis, saddened by the anonymous burials of strangers far from home. Hundreds died off Tunisia this year, the Migrant Forum said. Shalaki joined the protests after the shipwreck. It hasn't put him off.
I'd like to go to any European country for money and foreign currency. I'd like to fix the house, improve my situation and pay off my father's debt. I tried to cross 3 times. It wasn't easy. Thank God I'm still alive, and hopefully in the future I'll try again. I didn't give up.
The Twitter saga continues. A series of Twitter accounts belonging to journalists who covered Elon Musk and Twitter have been suspended without notice by the social media site. The suspended journalists include the New York Times' Ryan Mack and the Washington Post' Drew Harwell, and several other tech journalists. The journalists have in recent months written about Twitter's new ownership under Elon Musk and changes to the platform since he bought it back in October. Responding to a tweet on the account suspensions, Musk tweeted, "Some doxing rules apply to journalists as to everyone else," a reference made to Twitter banning sharing of personal information, which is called doxing. Musk added, "Criticizing me all day long is totally fine, but doxing my real-time location and endangering my family is not." The official account of social media company Mastodon joined Mastodon, which has emerged as an alternative to Twitter since Musk bought the company for $44 billion, was also suspended. On Thursday, Twitter suspended Elon Jet, an account tracking Musk's private jet in real time. A month after he said his commitment to free speech extended to not banning that particular account. The suspensions come a day after Twitter changed its policies around accounts that track private jets, including one owned by Elon Musk. Musk on Wednesday threatened legal action against the Elon Jet account operator and others, saying a car in Los Angeles carrying one of his children was followed by, quote, "a crazy stalker." Actors Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie added the Tinseltown glamour for the premiere of Babylon, about 1920s Hollywood. Written and directed by La La Land's Damien Chazelle, the film sees Pitt play an actor, Jack Conrad, who falls from grace through women, drugs, and alcohol after believing his own hype, while Robbie plays a party girl turned Hollywood actress. More about this in our next report.
If you could go anywhere in the whole world, where would you go?
I always want to be part of something bigger.
Yes.
Let's go!
No actors or dogs allowed. I changed that.
I think I learned a lot. I didn't know anything about, I know a lot about movies. I didn't know anything about 1920s Hollywood. How debaucherous it was, how wild it was, how cyclical a lot of things are. And I think a lot of it is going to resonate with people, and I think they're going to be surprised by a lot of things in this film.
Bigger than you.
We shot it the way, when I started filming, the way we used to is we shot on film. Everything's within camera. Like, you have real extras, real explosions. It's not like there's nothing CG generated here, except for the elephant. The elephant we had to CG.
And I'm going to bed.
Amid the Russian shelling in Ukraine, it's not just humans who are suffering. Animals abandoned by their owners suffer as well. 57-year-old Olena Bubenko from the small village of Kharkiv is a ray of hope for those animals. She's taken it upon herself to look after dogs that have been left behind by many who fled the village. She lives in a basement with 67 dogs.
People were leaving because they were afraid of shelling, and the dogs left without their owners started to come here to get some food. And now I have 67 dogs living here.
That's all the time we have for this news desk live from New York. On WION, I'm Susan Tehrani. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching, but do stay tuned for more news and updates coming up. Goodbye for now.
WION, now
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at WION.com.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
1 trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. 1 planet. Where are we heading? What should we do?
Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is One.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis. Only on WION. World is One.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is One.
Welcome. You're watching this WION VOA co-production with me, Neha Khanna. We will bring you all the big stories from the United States. First up on the show, let's get started. Our top story, US lawmakers reached a tentative deal this week to fund the government through next September, avoiding the prospect of a shutdown when Republicans take control of the US House in January. VOA congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has the latest from Washington.
Funding was set to